You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud, what women are actually talking about on Wednesday, the 8th of May. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens.
And on the show today, the Met Gala is silly. But apparently there are a few things we can learn from the first Monday in May. Also, Melbourne schoolboys have been expelled for ranking their female classmates in a particularly brutal way. Progress or a sign that nothing is changing? Also, The Bachelor is dead. In fact, all of the Bachelors are dead. Here in Australia, were they killed by a muddle of maths contestants and hot farmers? But first, Jessie.
In case you missed it, we are learning a lot about Donald Trump right now.
Oh, more than I would
don't
like
want
to.
know anymore.
I know that you don't read about Donald Trump anymore.
No,
Mia.
I've banned myself
And
for
I
mental
don't
health reasons.
usually either, but I came across some details in the Stormy Daniels case because I was like, what court case?
He is in
About
court at the moment. I've
what?
caught some headlines
Yeah.
about he keeps falling asleep.
Because there are a few charges, courts in
I know, it's
different
confusing
places. It's very
because he's
confusing.
always in court, it
exactly.
feels like.
And I'm like, wait, are we still running for president? Yes. I don't know
we are.
how we have our presidential campaign while being in court. Must be stressful. Light a candle. But Stormy Daniels, you might remember, she had an alleged sexual affair with the former president and current candidate, which prompted a hush money scheme, which is at the centre of a criminal case unfolding in New York City. Basically, Trump is accused, the accusation against him is that he falsified business records in order to pay to keep Daniels quiet on the eve of his 2016 election against Hillary Clinton. The claim is that he knew how detrimental a story about infidelity would be. Trump is facing felony charges, and this marks the first time in history that a former US president has been tried for criminal charges. Now, this week, the reason why you're going to see more headlines is that Stormy Daniels testified. We all know that when you testify, you get the gossip. That's what this is for those of us who are looking at this from a bird's eye view. Here are some of the things she said. And I should say, Stormy Daniels did get in trouble multiple times because they said this is not relevant. But she just wanted to give in some tidbits. She wanted to tell her story.
Good. Can you imagine? I mean, as if she hasn't suffered
Finally.
enough by having sex with that man. But also the MAGAs have been unleashed on her and the things that Trump said about her. I mean,
She is like,
life-changing
this
and
is-
life-ruining.
This
So
is my moment. And
we
she
are
is
Team
ready
Stormy.
to talk. So she recalled that shortly before she had sex with Trump, he said to her, this is a quote, "You remind me of my daughter. She's blonde and smart and beautiful, and people underestimate her as well."
That's great foreplay.
Yeah.
Anyone's listening, that's
Yeah.
what every woman wants to hear from the man she's about to have sex with,
Yep.
that you remind him of his daughter.
Yeah. When Daniels brought up Melania Trump, his wife, he allegedly replied, "Don't worry, we sleep in separate bedrooms." Barron was 4 months old at the time of this
Nice.
encounter. So Melania looks to have just been at home with her 4-month-old while Donald Trump was apparently having this affair.
Do we find that surprising in any way?
No, none
really.
of it.
He allegedly tried to persuade Stormy to go on The Apprentice. That's nice. And also, it will not surprise you that Trump has jumped on Truth Social to declare a mistrial. He said, this is a mistrial. She's sharing too much information. They've gone too far. The court turned around and said, this is not a mistrial, Donald Trump. The case is ongoing. So we're going to get more and more gossip.
I didn't even know which of these court cases was going on because, as I say, I'm in a self-imposed ban. But I did pick up that apparently he farted during
What?
in the courtroom,
Yes.
like quite loudly.
The utter disrespect.
I know. Matt, well, you know, when you fall asleep, your sphincter gets loosened, I imagine. Maybe he didn't realise.
Oh, my God.
Happy Met Gala week to those who celebrate. Yesterday was the biggest night of the year for people who like to look at rich and famous people wearing ridiculous things on red carpets. The Met Gala is technically a fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum in New York. Every year it's hosted by Vogue and masterminded by the iconic boss of Vogue, Anna Wintour. If you want to go, well, you can't. unless you're invited. Anna decides exactly who goes. But even if you are allowed to go, the price of one ticket this year is $75,000 US.
Yikesy.
Which is $25,000 more than last year. Or you can just buy a whole table, if that's easier, for $350,000.
Do you think because I spotted some of my Australian friends. There was a Naomi Watts, a
there were
Kylie
lots.
Minogue. I was very happy to see them all there.
Anthony Pratt, the Australian
Was he
billionaire.
there?
He was there wearing
Okay.
a pink suit. He looked very interesting.
So Anthony Pratt, I imagine, paid for his own seat. But I'm wondering if Naomi Watts, do you think he paid
what
for her seat?
happens, the tables and the tickets are bought generally by big brands and fashion houses. So like TikTok will have a table and Prada will have a table.
And all the beauty houses, and so their ambassadors will come, and the movie studios, so their stars will come. And
Got it.
And so sometimes celebrities who have contracts with those houses are obligated to come. Other times they will be paid to come because obviously every designer wants the coolest celebrity on their table and to be wearing their clothes. And sometimes they've never met before the night of the red carpet and all the arrangements are done with agents and managers, and then they walk the carpet with the designer. So
This
there's some
isn't
interesting pairings.
relevant to this segment, but do you know why Taylor Swift wasn't there?
Oh, she was never going to go. First of all, she's not a big fashion person. She doesn't care about
Right.
the fashion industry.
she has been there before, though.
Has she?
Yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago. And also, Taylor is in her own universe. This is Anna Wintour and Vogue's universe.
Do you think she was invited?
Oh,
for
for
sure.
sure.
Okay.
I mean, to have Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, or even just Taylor, walk the red carpet in your designs would have been worth millions. Anna would have tried so hard to get her there because she's the most famous and
Person in the
iconic
world.
woman in the world. Now, you can see every outfit on Mamamia via the link that we'll put in the show notes. But what makes it different to a regular red carpet at, say, the Oscars, is that with the Met Gala, there's always a theme that ties into the exhibition. And that means that the red carpet ranges from extra to batshit crazy.
It's like a theme party.
Yeah, it's like a
Because
fancy
the
dress
thing that
party.
makes it different from the Oscars and stuff is that these clothes are costumes, right? So
Yeah.
you're not expected to be able to walk, sit, eat, pee, except stand there. And we've all seen, I imagine.
Well, it's become more and more that way. So it used to be a lot more low-key, obviously. And every year now, particularly with the internet and things going viral, it gets more and more over the top. Now, this year, I don't remember before seeing celebrities carried up the red carpet.
Did you see Tyler was carried up the red carpet because she was wearing this dress that was
I think that was
sand?
my favourite dress.
But it
looked
was
like
less of a
sand.
dress and more of a body with some sand on it. But she was literally carried up. But also Lizzo had a very hard time getting up those stairs. Kim Kardashian couldn't walk in her dress.
She couldn't breathe.
And apparently lots of celebrities do this, and I'm just late to the party. But Sarah Jessica Parker on her way there in a standing limo, because apparently you get standing limos there because you can't
Yeah.
sit in your dress.
So
what happens inside?
They all get vans because they have to stand up as if you're on a train.
So when
or
they
on a
get there,
bus.
do they stand up in there? 'Cause
Yeah.
I've
What
seen it at
happens?
tables.
So I go inside. I'm at the Met Gala.
great
I do all
question.
of my posing, and then I go inside. Like, what is the event?
At the top of the stairs, for example, Tyler, after she was carried up, the designer came and cut, like someone else I know, cut the dress so that it turned into a miniskirt so that she could walk.
Handy.
And
Good.
no one knows what happens inside because cameras are banned so that the celebrities can kick back and have a good time.
They do have tables though, because I remember
Yeah.
I've watched that documentary about it.
Oh, yeah, they do sit down and
Yeah,
eat.
they sit down allegedly and eat, but none of those people can sit down, or at least not without Demi Moore taking one of your eyes out with one of the feathers.
But is
from
there
her teeth or something.
entertainment?
Like standing desks. Yes, Ariana Grande performed.
Sings, yeah.
Yeah, there's always entertainment. So the official thing this year was the Garden of Time, which ties in with the Costume Institute's latest exhibition at the Met, Sleeping Beauty's Reawakening Fashion.
It's a very complicated theme.
Yeah, no one understood the assignment. No one. The co-chairs, and so this is another clever thing that Anna Wintour does, right? So she appoints co-chairs, and really all they have to do is add their name to say, yes, I'm a co-chair, and then do nothing. But it sort of sets the tone because Anna Wintour is an extraordinary curator of popular culture. So the co-chairs this year, J-Lo, Zendaya, the CEO of TikTok was an honorary co-chair, Chris Hemsworth, and Bad Bunny.
Yep.
Now, this was
Oh,
quite
nice.
funny because they were all asked on the red carpet, oh, you're a co-chair. And they all pretty much said, I didn't do anything. And Chris Hemsworth just kept saying, I don't know anything about fashion. I don't know anything about fashion.
Why Chris Hemsworth?
He'll be in trouble because they needed someone kind of cool and they needed a man and they needed a heartthrob and he's Marvel. So, you know. Now, I had two takeaways from the coverage, two main takeaways. The first is that Anna Wintour has decided that John Galliano's back. He's the designer you may remember. He's 63 now, but he used to be the designer for Dior. He lost his job in 2011 when a video came out of him drunk and, shouting anti-Semitic abuse at people outside a restaurant in Paris. He now has finally got a new job 13 years later. He's the designer of a brand called Maison Margiela, and he's a very long-time friend of Anna Wintour, and she's got the power to bring cancelled designers back because there have been other designers who this has happened to. So the way that that's what she wants to do. She actually apparently wanted to make the theme about him, but there was pushback on that.
Because remember last year the theme was about Karl Lagerfeld, who is no longer with us, but that was controversial because he, as we know, has said lots of awful things when he was alive about not wanting plus-size people to wear his clothes, among other things.
That's right.
So if she'd have followed that up with John Galliano, little on the nose.
So, Zendaya and Kim Kardashian, the two most influential people in fashion right now, both wore Maison Margiela by John Galliano. So that's Anna Wintour saying, people, he is once again one of us. The other thing that was interesting that made me cringe is that obviously in these Cosy Lives times and the 1%, no one wants to say how much their dress cost. So the new flex is how many hours your dress took to make. I'll give you a little example. So a lot of the celebrities, when they were asked about their dress, recited, because they obviously get talking points from the designer, how many hours it took to make their dress. Alia Bhatt is a British actress of Indian descent who predominantly works in Hindi films. She looked absolutely gorgeous. She was wearing this beautiful sari that had this 23-foot long train and that was sort of intricately beaded. Here's what she said when she was asked about what she was wearing.
And how long did it take to make your sari? It's the work on it's truly exquisite.
Yeah. So this is all hand embroidery.
Of course it is.
It's taken, let me get this number right because it's extremely important when you talk about craftsmanship. 1,905 man hours and 163 craftsmen, embroidery workers, everybody to make this garment.
I'm unsurprised because the work is really sublime.
What goes into the dress?
You can see so many years of experience and talent. And did you enjoy meeting the people in the atelier who made it?
Actually, I haven't had the chance to meet them, but I've seen so many videos and I'm so excited to bring all of that out to the world for everybody to see.
I don't know. I just felt really cringy, this idea of, and I know that it's fantasy and I know it's the 1% and everything, but this idea that it's a flex to say it took 193 people 2,000 hours to create this dress that I'm wearing on a red carpet for a few hours. I just had a slight existential crisis.
Well, I saw some of the pictures come in and I went, this is all very nice. This is costumey. But as a basic bitch, I need to know what this means about me and my fashion going forward because we've discussed socks, the shape of jeans, blah, blah, blah.
It's a difficult time.
It's a difficult time to try to dress yourself in the morning. So the first thing that I learned.
What were your takeaways?
Okay, the bob is back in a big way. The bob.
Oh,
the hair bob. Everyone had a bob. And the other thing about a bob is that they all had a side part. So I think the side part is taking over. We all had to go middle part. And I was very late to that trend, but apparently side part coming back. So millennials are excited about that.
Okay.
Second thing, what do you think the biggest colour was? Guess. What was the biggest colour at the Met Gala ball
There
this year?
wasn't much colour.
Beige.
Yeah.
It was beige. It's all about the nude.
It's nude.
All about the beige.
You know, the thing about how many hours it takes, I understand why they do that because those people are all getting paid, right? The people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good
They're
thing.
the talking points.
But that's
Oh, sorry, you mean all the people that made the dress are all
Yes.
getting paid? Yeah, that's true.
it's a less on the nose explanation of how expensive it is for a good reason. All those people who spent those thousands and thousands of hours making that dress were getting paid to do it. So that's a good thing, right? You could argue creating employment, etc.
That's true.
It's the pretension that I can't handle. My friend Rita Ora, and I do actually love her, she's one of my favourite follows, was wearing what I have hanging up in my back door to keep the flies out of my house, which is a beaded curtain.
Yes.
Here's what she said about her fly curtain.
What is happening? Like, what are you guys wearing? How old is what you're wearing?
Oh, very old. So we're wearing Marnie this evening, and Francesca, who's one of my dearest friends. We really wanted to take fashion for me with the theme into sort of a timeless beauty. So all these beads really age back to the 1st and 2nd century BC.
What?
I mean, some are like older than I think anyone on this planet.
Where was it archived? Where has it been living?
Well, North Africa, Europe. So actually the team
Marnie's been
searched.
holding these for 2,000
So the
years.
team searched really far to find such individual beads. So it's really special that we were able to make it.
heavy is
It's
it?
very heavy.
How are you going to walk? Are you going to carry her up the steps?
Well, you better.
She was wearing some beads, and mostly what I was looking at was her remarkable body.
Well, you've just hinted to the third thing that's about to be big.
Bums,
Well, bums,
waists,
bodycon
Yeah.
is back. The
Oh, yay.
silhouette. The silhouette, and you saw it with Kim Kardashian, but also with J-Lo, and you can just see bum on full display. But this figure-hugging female form thing just was everywhere. And apparently, this season in the US, and then we're usually a season behind. Yeah, it's going to be big. We're going to be back in our bodycon dresses, everyone.
They had a really good excuse because time, hourglass, corset, you see?
Nice.
Personally, it gave me a lot of inspiration for tomorrow night's Melbourne show.
Yeah.
Rada in particular was wearing
I'll be getting my nips out.
a sheer lace something
Yep.
that I saw everything.
It's just what she always wears.
Doja Cat in her literal wet T-shirt was amazing. She literally just wore water.
I loved it.
I was thinking about that for
I did
tomorrow
like
night.
that. Do you know who my best dressed was? Pamela Anderson.
Great.
She looked great.
She looked so happy. She had a little bit of makeup on, which was interesting. She was dressed so beautifully. She was in just
Also
a
a
creamy
nudie,
colour,
yeah.
nudie colour that matched the yellow goldy tones in her hair. She just looked happy. I just love this era of Pammy. So Outlouders, you can go and look at all the pictures. We'll put a link in the group. We'll put a link in the show notes. Who did you think was best dressed? Let's be positive.
And how long did it take to make Mamamia Out Loud? The work on it's truly exquisite.
Oh,
The expulsion of 2 boys from a private school in Melbourne has been making headlines this week after a spreadsheet was uncovered that ranked their female classmates in order of appearance. The spreadsheet had photos of these classmates and placed them into categories, including wifeys, cuties, mid, object, get out, and finally, unrapeable. The principal, Dr. Mark Merry, said sexism and misogyny are ever present in our society, and it is the responsibility of all of us, families, teachers, the media, workmates, and friends, to stand up and make it clear that it is not acceptable anywhere.
And I had to think of the young women in this case, that they need to know we took it seriously, and they need to know that these things do have consequences. It's important that they do learn from this, because this needs to be a learning moment as well. I think all of us, teachers, parents, the media, all of us need to sit back and say, hold on. If we say it's their problem, we're not owning it. I think all of us need to own it, and it's a role for all of us to play. Is there a problem here at times with these kind of sexist attitudes? Absolutely. Are we tackling it? Will we tackle it? Yes, we will. Is it acceptable? No, it's not. But I would hope that this kind of conversation is being held in every school and every workplace and every home in Australia at the moment, because that's where it should be.
Dr. Stephanie Westcott, who is an expert in sexism in schools, has praised the school for prioritising the safety of female students and their right to an education without fear of sexism or sexual harassment. I think the three of us are probably all in agreement that the ranking of women by their appearance and the objectification of classmates and the use of the word unrapeable is abhorrent and inexcusable. But what I want to discuss is the causal link that's being drawn between this instance of sexism or disrespect and the rates of domestic violence in this country. That's sort of the narrative that this story slid neatly into. There's been a bit of pushback in the last week against the idea that violence against women is this sort of men's issue and one that begins with the seeds of disrespect. And we'll interrogate that a bit more in a moment. But first, I just wanted to ask, Holly, what do you think of the decision to expel these students? Because that's a big statement.
Oh, it's 100% the right decision, because the list in itself is not surprising. As Gemma Bath wrote when she wrote about it on Mamamia, when she was at uni, all the boys did that. Everybody knew where they stood on the hot list. You know, it was common. Maybe the language wasn't quite so violent, but it's not a surprising thing. But what is surprising and encouraging in these times is that the school acted as quickly as they did. It's not a perfect solution, as lots of people have pointed out. The kids who've been expelled, they will end up at a public high school who cannot be selective about who they take in, and so they should. Like, it's not like they should be disappeared or anything.
Yeah.
But the reason that it's a positive thing is because, like, zero tolerance consequences is something that I think is really important, because I do think that this disrespect is a large part of where it starts, as I'm sure we're about to discuss.
Do you know how Facebook started? That was Mark Zuckerberg in his
I forgot
room at Harvard. It was called The Facebook, and it was basically a way to rank all the women at Harvard. It was just photos of all the women at Harvard so that people could rank them. So, look, objectifying women and ranking them and rating them is not new. Men have been objectifying women and society has been objectifying women. And now women objectify themselves, and I will say that. Like, this is just a thing that happens, right? Because when a woman's value is tied to her appearance, and it still is in a patriarchal society and always has been, this is going to be the result. The difference is now that technology has changed that. So I'll just give another example that's not about sexism, but that things that have always gone on are now visible to everybody. And people will always talk about other people behind their back. That's just a thing. But for example, on Snapchat, you know, people have always been like not invited to parties or not invited. Now young people will be, if they're on Snapchat, and they all are, there's snap maps, so you don't get invited to Anna's house, and then you see that all of your friends are at Anna's house because you can see where all your friends are on a map and they're all at Anna's house, but you weren't invited, or they lied to you and said, oh no, we're all staying home tonight. And you can see that's not true. Similarly, we always knew that there were popular people and not popular people. Now you post a photo, you can literally see how many likes you get. So it's almost like these things that have always happened, we're now seeing them and we don't know how to process that. So I know this isn't linked necessarily to misogyny, but I think that to say this is new and boys behaving this way or men behaving this way is new is not true.
No one is saying that.
Okay.
What I just said literally is that this has gone on forever.
You're not saying it.
And what is new is that there is a much stricter, like the school would have just slapped their wrist 10 years ago. The school would have just gone, tut, 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 tut.
You're right. He had to expel them, the principal, and it did send a message. My question is, what happens? Does this drive boys to Andrew Tate?
Yeah.
And that it's not fair and why can't we? And does this sow the seeds of hatred towards women? And I'm not saying he should have done anything other than expel them, but...
So what's different about this story is the national temperature in which it broke.
And everything being linked to violence against
the
women.
Domestic violence crisis is obviously something that a lot of people are talking about and we're trying to grapple with. And a big thing that a lot of people say is it starts with respect and it starts with schools. They'll say we need to get into schools, we need to teach young boys about respect towards women. So the theory that violence exists on a continuum and it begins with an act of disrespect, this fits neatly into that. This is sort of like it starts here and then in 10 years you see front page of the paper because another woman has been murdered, right? There was an article last week by Waleed Ali for The Age, and he basically challenged the narrative that holding all men responsible for a violent minority is productive. He has extensively studied the roots of violence, and he quotes a prison psychiatrist named James Gilligan, who says, all violence is an attempt to replace shame and self-esteem. And then Gilligan goes on to say, the most dangerous men on earth are those who are afraid they are wimps. Basically, Ali says that the literature doesn't support the idea that all violence begins with disrespect. It's something else. There's humiliation, shame, and guilt are motivating drivers, not necessarily a lack of respect. And he kind of questions, if our attitudes are improving, then why is it that people under 24, the demographic with the most gender equal attitudes, are perpetrating sexual abuse at greater rates? That's the big question. So this stimulated a lot of discussion. It was in the Out Louders Facebook group over the weekend. Holly, what did you make of it?
I disagreed with the headline. The headline on the piece by Waleed, which it would not necessarily have been his choice. We all work in the media. We know how this works. Writers don't always get to choose their own headline. I would argue that a writer of that standing probably gets some influence on whether or not he hates the headline. Holding all men responsible for a violent minority has failed to keep women safe. That headline is really provocative, in my opinion, because I don't think that's what women have been doing. I don't think we've been holding all men responsible for the actions of a few. I think we've been asking for men to stand up with us, beside us in condemning this, right? Now, obviously, Waleed Ali is an incredibly intelligent guy. The research is really fascinating. I would argue the disrespecting is semantics because he was arguing that the most dangerous men are the ones who feel disrespected, and that is absolutely true. So respect is very key here. What all the people who work in this space say is that it's all about women saying no. No, I don't want to be with you. No, I don't want to behave like you want me to behave. No, I won't let you control me. No, I don't want to stay in this relationship anymore. No, I don't want to have sex with you. That disrespects them, right? And that is a very big
by
driver.
Patriarchal standards where, because all of those things sound really reasonable, right? And they're not disrespectful. You know, if you said that to a man who was a feminist, who didn't have sort of patriarchal ideas that a woman shouldn't talk back, that a woman should listen and do whatever her husband says, and that he's the boss of the household or the boss of her, that she shouldn't have her own free will, then that is perceived with disrespect. So surely you've got to go back another step and say that's still about his attitudes.
Yeah, and it's still broadly about an environment where women are seen as chattel and objects and things that people who exist for men to do with what they will. The other thing is, and this is not only Ali's point, I've seen it around a lot, a tiny minority of men are killing women. That's what I keep hearing, right? The thing that willfully disregards, in my opinion, and not only my opinion, but the stats show, the faces that end up on our front pages in these horrific stories are the tiniest pinhead on the tip of an iceberg. How can we say that only a minority of men have problematic views towards women at all when the phone rings in a police station in New South Wales every 3 minutes? I've said it before, I'll say it again. Think of all the phone calls that phone call doesn't represent. Think of all the incidences where no one picked up the phone. The reason that women feel connected to this idea of we live in a culture that doesn't respect women is because we feel it from the minute we become visible. And so I know that it feels clumsy to suggest there's a continuum between being ogled at in the street or ranked in the classroom or being told your skirt's too short to being hit. I know that feels like a sort of clumsy thing, but women feel it. We feel the disrespect from the minute we start being looked at. So I kind of think that it's not helpful.
The objectification,
I guess what I thought about that piece is very, of course, very smart, very insightful, really interesting, the stuff about same-sex relationships and about cultures in which they have more gender equal
Nordic
policies.
paradox,
And also very, very valid point that a lot of people who work in this space will say that very often violence exists alongside lots of other issues, trauma, unresolved trauma, alcohol, drugs, and so on. But how helpful is it to push back on a culture that's trying to change the way men talk about women in ways like this, in a way where we say, no, it's not okay to say that your classmates are unrapeable. Like, I don't get that.
I know. And to be clear, this article was written before that story came out. So,
of course.
Yes. But I think on the point of how helpful is it to push back, if our response to this problem appears to be making the problem worse, then do we have to interrogate whether our response is correct? Is there something...
I don't think that's true, though.
Well, if we look at the under 24s and people are saying that young men...
But government campaigns that Ali was talking about in particular there about like stop it at the start, all violence starts with disrespect. How do you isolate that from porn culture online? How do you isolate that from a whole lot of other issues? How can we say that campaign is making things worse? It's not.
But is our focus on disrespect, which in and of itself I think is a really important thing, right? Like women being disrespected is an issue regardless of domestic violence and needs to be addressed. But has our focus been a little bit disproportionate? So is all the focus on that coming at the cost of, and he cites Jess Hill, who is one of the best advocates on this issue. She's an absolute expert and she talks about the gambling, the alcoholism, the pornography, and also I think the trauma point is really important and one we probably don't talk about enough. Because if we think about humiliation, shame and guilt, they're psychological issues that you have from, say, a traumatic childhood from neglect,
Or from attitudes you've been raised to believe and that you've internalized about the place of women in society and in marriage,
like for
and in
example,
relationships.
one thing that, and we talked about this actually in the context of Baby Reindeer, but the cycle of abuse is something we probably don't talk about enough. The fact that the statistics of the men who go on to hit their partners, the likelihood that they grew up with a dad who hit their mum is high. So we don't like seeing that it's not simply that the victim becomes the perpetrator, basically. Because our scope for empathy or understanding someone who becomes a perpetrator, I understand that. That's not what we have time for.
What I liked about Waleed's piece, I found myself agreeing with a lot of it, and that is that what happens when you're part of a group, and he drew a beautiful parallel about he's Muslim and he spent a lot of time as a Muslim man being asked to apologise or justify the actions of Muslim extremists, and somehow him being tarred with that brush that, because you share a faith, the fact that, ISIS are beheading people, what have you got to say about that?
Are you going to sit down with your brothers?
And I feel like, and I've seen it in action with men who I love, who are staunch feminists, who are devastated by this, but I've seen the look in their eye when we are understandably angry. And it's like they're the closest person, and it will be like, stop killing us. Why are men killing women? And they get really defensive and they get insulted. And I also understand that. It's like, but they're not killing
But that's not
women.
what we're saying. This is what I mean. It's a willful misunderstanding of what we're saying. I would challenge anyone who thinks it's a teeny tiny percentage of men to spend some time in the comments section on the video we posted last week about this issue, or manning the Mamamia inbox, or any place where women are talking, the Out Louders group. The stories, the everyday stories from women from all demographics, is alarming. And all we're asking is, men, can you come and stand with us and condemn these people? And can you come and stand with us and say, no, it's not okay to hero that guy on TV anymore because maybe he's a good bloke now, he wasn't once, or anything. Just stand with us. We're not blaming you, all of you. We're just saying this is happening to an enormous amount of us on a sliding scale, an enormous amount. And so telling us that it's not really a big problem and it's just a tiny percentage of bad men, it feels like a betrayal.
I don't
mean that. I want to be really clear. No, I want to be really clear that I'm not saying that to Waleed Ali about his very well thought out piece. But his very well thought out piece is part of a pushback that I'm seeing broadly.
Which is hashtag not all men.
Yeah, we literally had a week, maybe 10 days of the media talking about this issue on every front page and every news show. And it's what we'd been asking for. And it was very traumatic for a lot of women, to be honest, to see that every time they turned on. I can also understand that it was annoying for a lot of men who went, hold on, but not me.
Not all men, yeah.
But now it's off the front pages again, and it will be until there's another horrific story and another horrific incident. But it hasn't disappeared from the house 3 doors down from you, and it hasn't disappeared from the young girls at school who are being raided by their classmates. I think, let's just all agree that we just want to have a united approach about, disrespect, yes, is bad. Violence, yes, is bad. All these things are bad.
Yeah,
Help us out.
I reckon the more experts and the more clever minds who can put their heads down and write about it is probably a good thing. The Nordic paradox, I think, is a really interesting point, which is basically that in countries where there is more gender equality, there is more domestic violence. That is something that a lot of experts look at and they can't explain. So there's inconvenient data that goes, hang on, this idea that if men and women were just more equal, then we would stamp out violence doesn't appear to be the case. But that's okay. I think we just need to,
But that's not what we're saying. I don't think that women in general are saying that we just need to get to a utopian society and all this will stop. We'll say one of the things that would help is if our society was less generally casually sexist and disrespectful towards women. But also we need to address all these different buckets. That's what I think people are saying.
Out Louders, we support a charity called Rise Up here at Mamamia, and we would love you to help support them with us. For just $2 a week, you can help women and their children who are escaping from domestic violence. We will put a link in the show notes. And of course, if you need support yourself or someone you know needs support, please call 1-800-RESPECT.
Want unlimited Out Loud access? We drop episodes every Tuesday and Thursday exclusively for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get us in your ears 5 days a week. And a huge thank you to all our current subscribers.
I'm sorry that you didn't receive a rose. Please take the time to say goodbye.
The Bachelor is no more. In fact, all the Australian Bachelors are no more. They've been cancelled, like literally cancelled, not just cancelled on social media.
What will all those handsome men do?
I know. The 11th season of The Bachelor, I believe it was last year, premiered to just over 300,000 people, which sounds like kind of a lot, but it's not in TV world. No. It's been steadily declining for a while, the interest and obsession with The Bachelor, and so the pin has been pulled, and along with The Masked Singer, Channel 10 has said, no more batchies. But if you think that we're just over watching people fall in love, or something like love that comes with the side of climbing follower numbers on your social media, you'd be wrong. Farmer Wants a Wife this week scored an Australian audience of more than 2 million, which is a lot, right? And that's interesting because that show literally markets itself as being the exact opposite of the other show that is often credited with killing The Bachelor, MAFS, which also regularly pulls in around 2 million viewers. And that, as we know, Married at First Sight, is a much more salacious, hookup-y kind of show. Now, I'm not going to shed any tears for the show where loads of women had to compete for one quite average dude, but I am interested in what it takes to get and hold our attention in 2024, and also about what the reality shows that we're currently obsessed with say about us. Luckily for us, we're experts in this field, or at least Jessie Stevens is. She has written about reality TV for years.
You used to recap The Bachelor and MAFS,
Yeah, I worked out at the end of a Married at First Sight season, I would have written the equivalent of a novel. Like 80,000 words on Married at First Sight.
Every season.
Yeah, and then I actually had to look in the mirror and go, you know what? Time is finite. You're going to die one day. I'm actually not going to write this.
Do you remember when on a whim you just started a MAFS LOLs Facebook group?
Yeah, it's got 50,000 people in it.
And then it just went so crazy you had to leave it.
Yes, it's just a total dumpster fire.
So lucky for us, we've got you here. Yeah. What does Osher's sudden unemployment say about all of us?
Oh, poor Osher. He's lost 2 jobs in a week.
I love Osher.
I know, but I think that they said that they do have another job for him this year. And Osher said that he knows.
They said he's a friend of Network 10 and he'll still be narrating Bondi Rescue. That's a little bit of a come down.
Which is a great job. That is a great job. I would love that job. I think this is a result of dopamine culture. There are not enough dopamine hits in a season of The Bachelor. I tried to watch the last season. I don't know why. It's like I knew it was the last gasp and I went, I need to understand what we're losing here.
Explain what you mean. Do you mean like the drama spike?
Yes. So dopamine culture is this idea that everything from the way we're having conversations to the way we watch television to the way we listen to music is like it has to be in these spikes because we need to constantly, it's because of our fractured attention. But the way that we watch reality TV, like say Married at First Sight, there were 14 drama points in an episode, right? And highly, highly dramatic. So we always had the cheating scandal. We had the nude photo scandal a few seasons ago. It wasn't just about the episode. It was about the way it fueled the news cycle. And the relationship between the reality TV show and the Daily Mail needs to be so symbiotic in order for them to kind of fuel each other. Because then I'm watching because I'm seeing and I've got FOMO because of the things. And then every episode, the Daily Mail is watching going, there's 11 angles in this. And in that way, it's always front page everywhere. So it self-promotes.
So this is kind of like what we were talking about Baby Reindeer again on Monday, which is the way that we watch TV now with our phones in our hands. You have to design your show to fit that culture.
So then what about Farmer Wants a Wife? Because I haven't watched that or MAFS, but they're obviously the 2 biggest reality shows in the country.
Yeah, so
isn't Farmer Wants a Wife more old-fashioned like The Bachelor? What's the difference?
I haven't watched Farmer Wants a Wife, but I did do a quick Google and I found what I was looking for, which is that if you want to find 15 articles written in the last week about Farmer Wants a Wife, they all have the word shocking in it. Like I have to have shocking moments in order to keep the interest in and have the FOMO because it is near impossible to promote appointment viewing. The reality shows that really truly work on streaming services, and they're getting more and more outlandish. It's like sons and fathers compete for the same woman.
Yeah.
Like it's completely outrageous, borderline illegal now. But the reason that works is because I can sit down and binge it all on a weekend. My issue with reality TV now is that I've missed the first 4 episodes of MAFS. I don't have time to go back and watch 8 hours of Married at First Sight in order to understand what episode 6 is about. So getting them into appointment viewing is obviously all about the apparatus around it, but it's the shocking revelations that can keep our interest. And Bachelor had none.
True. I also think that Farmer, in the same way that trad wives have appeal online, where it's kind of like a self-soothing, like my life is chaotic and I just spend 4 hours screaming at my children every day, but here's a lady over here whipping butter in a really pretty kitchen. It's like that. If I'm on the dating apps in a city and I'm dealing with endless men holding fish, lying about who they are, ghosting me, you know, all that kind of stuff, and then I'm like, look at these lovely, handsome men who know how to wrestle a calf to the ground and could light me a fire and save me in a difficult situation. It's like a soothing fantasy.
Do you think there's also something there about how alienated rural and regional Australians feel by all media?
They
like
never
maybe
see
they feel
themselves
seen.
reflected.
Yeah.
You know, it's so, The Bachelor is so Sydney and so metro and so is MAFS and so is every other TV show that's on. Not since McLeod's Daughters has there been an Australian show that reflects. Actually, Muster Dogs is great. I bloody love Muster Dogs. Shout out to all our rural and regional outlouders. Of course, these people want to see their lives reflected. And the other thing I would say is that the structural problem with The Bachelor is that it's about one person, and that is hard to sustain people's interest in that person over all of that time.
So in the last season they tried 3 and it was bad.
It doesn't work, and then it's all the different. And so here it's a love story. People do like a love story still, but there's a number of them to follow. So to me, from what I understand, is that Farmer Wants a Wife is almost like the anti-MAFS.
Yeah, it is.
In that it's wholesome and pure and the people are there for the right reasons, and it's actually hopefully going to work out.
That's how they actually promote it.
Yeah.
So Samantha Armitage hosts it now. I've got a friend who loves it, so I will see it at her house. And the literal trailers are the show where people fall in love, and they'll give you the count of how many marriages, how many babies. So they're very heavily marketing it as the anti-MAFS. Yeah. And clearly there's a large portion of people who want to believe that dream, and also who want to believe that they could be whisked away from their everyday life. It's like fanfic. It's like that hot kind of like hot farmer comes and takes me away from all this. Yeah. It's very seductive.
It's escapism.
At the same time, it's delivering 45 parallel plot lines, which is what we need to sustain our interest.
And also, as you would have found on your Daily Mail search, it is not entirely as authentic as it seems, of course. You will always read lots of stories. It's like, that's not his farm, that's not his house, that doesn't look... It's selling a very specific rural aesthetic of these like gorgeous barns with like candles in mason jars hanging from the ceiling and fairy lights everywhere, that if you've ever actually been on a farm in the modern times in Australia, not a lot.
And can I just say, I've seen Osher Gunsberg in action. I remember going like Bachelor in Paradise things, and I'd watch it being filmed and him doing his job. He is so good at his job. I was watching him going.
He is the host with the most.
Oh, he doesn't make an error. I was like.
He gives it loads.
You are on every show because you are supremely talented. So I hope that man finds another freelance gig.
Melbourne, this is your last chance to see us live on the stage in 2 different outfits, which is the most exciting thing since the Met Gala.
My dress is actually a bit Met Gala. I've been thinking about it. It's very Met Gala inspired.
She's just wearing a wet T-shirt with some sand on it.
Exactly. Mamamia Out Loud Live, presented by Nivea Cellular, is tomorrow night. That's Thursday night. Be spontaneous. Give yourself a little treat. Head to outloudlive.com.au and grab the last few tickets left for our live show. Bring a friend, come on your own. We've got a place for all the people who are coming solo. We are so excited to see you there. There'll be a link in the show notes.
Yesterday, we did something very controversial. We told you what our day on a plate looks like. And if you're wondering if we've already been cancelled, yes.
A little bit, yeah.
The conversations that this has generated, it was a very interesting episode because I went in going, I think this is unethical.
We're trying to reclaim it.
Let me tell you what's on my plate. And Mia was like, we're reclaiming it. And then you had your boring as batshit.
I disagree. I don't think my day on the plate was boring at all. But it was very honest. Here's a little sneak peek.
You two crazy were like, we should do a day
on our
plate as a subscriber episode. And
Yeah.
I said, absolutely not. I am ethically against it. I think as a culture, we speak too much about food. We put too much value on it.
Food is great.
We are, and especially with women, it's like the way in which we look at a body and then we look at the food and then it's like...
Can't we
she's no
reclaim the
fun.
conversation?
Well, we're going to try to.
A link to that episode so you can find out exactly what we eat in a day will be in the show notes.
Thank you for listening to Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman. And we've had audio production by Leah Porges. And we will see you, well, some of you, Melbourne tomorrow night, but the rest of you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and you want to support us, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do it. There's a link in the episode description.